Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I'm 34, and my sister Emily is 30. My husband and I have been trying to have a child for over 5 years. It's been an exhausting and emotional journey, filled with fertility treatments, endless doctor's visits, and moments where we felt like giving up. The toll it took on us emotionally and financially was immense, but the desire to start a family kept us going. Last year, after yet another failed round of treatment, my doctor suggested we take a break. It was during this time that, miraculously, I conceived naturally. When the test came back positive, I was in disbelief. My husband and I were overjoyed, but also cautious because of everything we'd been through. We waited until I was safely into my second trimester before sharing the news. I wanted to savor every moment of this pregnancy and finally start enjoying what felt like a long overdue blessing. Emily and I have always had a strained relationship. Growing up, she was the quintessential golden child, charming, outgoing, and the center of attention wherever she went. I've always been more reserved, and I never minded that she loved the spotlight. But Emily's need for attention often came at the expense of others, especially me. Over the years, there were countless incidents where she'd make everything about herself. Whether it was a birthday, a graduation, or even our parents' anniversary, Emily somehow managed to steal the show. If she wasn't the focus of the event, she would sulk or create drama to redirect attention to herself. When Emily got engaged 6 months ago to her longtime boyfriend, Jake, it was as if the world revolved around her. She immediately began planning an extravagant wedding with financial help from our parents. Emily didn't shy away from flaunting how lavish her plans were, using every family gathering as an opportunity to gush about her wedding dress, venue, or honeymoon. While I was genuinely happy for her, I also knew that dealing with her self-centeredness during my pregnancy would be challenging. When I entered my second trimester, my husband and I decided it was time to share our news with the family. We announced my pregnancy during a small family dinner, and everyone was thrilled. Our parents were overjoyed at the thought of becoming grandparents, and even Jake seemed genuinely happy for us. Emily, however, was less enthusiastic. She gave us a lukewarm congratulations before quickly changing the subject back to her wedding plans. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she might need time to process the news. But looking back, it was clear that she wasn't happy about sharing the spotlight. Last month, Emily hosted her engagement party, a lavish event funded by our parents. She invited all of our extended family and friends, and naturally, my husband and I were there. I made a conscious effort not to draw attention to myself or pregnancy. I wore a loose-fitting dress and didn't bring up the baby unless someone specifically asked. Despite my efforts, a few observant relatives noticed my growing baby bump and came over to congratulate me. Their congratulations were warm and heartfelt, and they quickly moved on to talking about Emily's upcoming wedding. It was nothing more than polite excitement, but Emily clearly didn't see it that way. Midway through the evening, Emily pulled me aside with an icy glare. She accused me of stealing her thunder and turning her engagement party into a baby shower. I was stunned. I tried to explain that I hadn't told anyone about the pregnancy that night and that people had simply noticed on their own, but she wouldn't listen. Emily started raising her voice, drawing the attention of nearby guests. She called me selfish and dramatic, accusing me of ruining her special day. When I tried to calm her down, she escalated further, yelling that I needed to leave. Mortified, I grabbed my husband and quietly left the party. As we drove home, I started experiencing severe cramping and spotting. Panicked, my husband took me to the ER. I was terrified that the stress Emily had caused might harm my baby. Thankfully, the baby was okay, but the doctors warned me to avoid stress as it could jeopardize my pregnancy. It was one of the most frightening experiences of my life, and I couldn't stop crying at the thought of how close I came to losing everything we'd worked so hard for. When our parents found out what happened, they were furious. They couldn't believe Emily would treat me so horribly, especially knowing how much I'd been through to get to this point in my pregnancy. They confronted her about her behavior, but instead of apologizing, Emily doubled down. She insisted that I was the one in the wrong for stealing her spotlight and refused to take any accountability. After days of heated arguments, our parents decided they'd had enough. They told Emily they were no longer paying for her wedding. This was a huge deal because Emily had already booked a lavish venue, catering, and other vendors, all under the assumption that our parents would foot the bill. Without their financial support, she and Jake would have to either downsize the wedding or figure out how to pay for it themselves. Emily was livid when she found out about our parents' decision. She called me in a rage, accusing me of manipulating them and ruining her life. She demanded that I convince our parents to change their minds and resume funding her wedding. According to her, it was my fault they'd withdrawn their support, so it was my responsibility to fix it. I refused. I told her that I wouldn't try to change our parents' minds, and that she needed to take responsibility for her actions. I reminded her that she was the one who caused a scene at her own engagement party, kicked me out, and contributed to the stress that landed me in the ER. I also pointed out that our parents were adults who made their own decision to stop supporting her financially after seeing how poorly she treated me. Emily wasn't having it. She called me selfish, vindictive, and jealous, insisting that I'd ruined her engagement party on purpose to sabotage her wedding. She's been bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. This has left our family deeply divided. My husband, close friends, and a few relatives fully support me and believe Emily is facing the consequences of her own actions. Others, including some extended family members, think I should be the bigger person and help smooth things over for the sake of family unity. A few of Emily's friends have even sent me nasty messages, accusing me of being vindictive and unsupportive. Our parents, meanwhile, are standing firm. They've expressed regret for enabling Emily's entitlement for so long and believe this is a necessary wake-up call for her. They've told her they won't reconsider paying for the wedding unless she apologizes and shows genuine remorse for her behavior. So far, Emily has refused, doubling down on her belief that I'm the one who owes her an apology. I'm torn. On one hand, I know I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't announce my pregnancy at her party or intentionally draw attention to myself. People simply noticed my bump and congratulated me, which is a normal and kind reaction. Emily's over-the-top reaction and the stress she caused me were entirely her own doing. On the other hand, I hate the tension this has caused within our family. Part of me wonders if I should try to smooth things over, but I also feel like doing so would only enable Emily's behavior. She's 30 years old. It's time for her to take responsibility for her actions and stop blaming others for her problems. At this point, my priority is my health and the health of my baby. I've worked too hard to get to this point to let Emily's drama drag me down. If she can't see how her actions have hurt me and our family, then that's on her. Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to convince my parents to pay for Emily's wedding after she kicked me out of her engagement party and sent me to the ER? OP has been through so much just to have this baby, and OP's sister's behavior is absolutely appalling. It's one thing to be upset about sharing the spotlight, but kicking OP out of her party and causing her so much stress that OP ended up in the ER? That's beyond petty. It's cruel. OP's parents are absolutely right to pull their financial support for her wedding. She's 30 years old, not a child, and it's time for her to take accountability for her actions. OP should not feel guilty for prioritizing her health and her baby's well-being. OP has done nothing wrong here. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Your sister's entitlement is off the charts. She literally tried to kick you out of a family event because people noticed you were pregnant and were happy for you. She literally tried to kick you out of a family event because people noticed you were pregnant and were happy for you. Something entirely out of your control. And now she expects you to convince your parents to pay for her wedding after she caused you so much harm? No way. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. You're not responsible for fixing the mess she created. Let her face the reality of her behavior. It's long overdue. Not the a-hole. This must be such a difficult situation for you, especially with how much you've been through to get to this point in your pregnancy. Your sister's behavior at her engagement party was completely out of line, and the fact that it caused you so much stress you ended up in the ER makes it even worse. I understand why you might feel torn about the family tension, but trying to mend things would only enable her bratty behavior. She needs to grow up and learn that she can't treat people this way. Focus on your health and your baby. You've earned this happiness. Not the a-hole. What your sister did was selfish, immature, and downright dangerous to your health. Kicking you out of her party for something as trivial as people noticing your baby bump was not only petty, but incredibly harmful. You have every right to protect your peace and prioritize your pregnancy, especially after everything you've been through. Your parents pulling their financial support is a natural consequence of her actions, and it's not your job to fix this. Stay strong, and don't let her guilt trip you into thinking you're in the wrong here. You've done nothing but stand up for yourself, and that's exactly what you should continue to do. I'll make it clear, 110%. I dislike my ex-sister-in-law a lot. She and my brother had the most toxic relationship that I've ever seen, and she is one of the nastiest and meanest people that I have ever met. However, she is the mother of my 9-year-old nephew, who I am very close with, and I am like a second dad to him. While my sister-in-law is a witch, my brother is a moron. After my ex-sister-in-law divorced a few years ago, he started his own business. It did well because he had the right people at the right time. He ended up buying a nice house and pays enough child support so he and his ex can live close by and do their 50-50 custody agreement. My brother is an incredibly weak man when it comes to women. He tends to rush into things and portrays himself as this rich, successful businessman who's going to retire in a couple of years and just wants to find a woman to take care of and grow old with. Usually he ends up with women who are just as damaged as he is. At the beginning of the year, he met Cassidy. 3 months into the relationship, she moved into his house with her 3 kids, 22, 19, and 16. None of them had a job, so he got them jobs at his business. Between hiring his unqualified girlfriend and kids, who were now a daily distraction, he made some bad get-rich-quick choices. Then the virus destroyed his business. Now my brother is living off PPP loans while supporting his girlfriend and 3 kids. He is tight on money. He will run out of money by December and won't have enough cash to pay his mortgage or the rent at his business. My ex-sister-in-law lost her job too. To make matters more complicated, my nephew needs braces and my brother and sister-in-law can't afford that either. My brother had the nerve to ask me for a cash loan to get him through a few months. Do I have the money? Yes. Is it a big financial sacrifice? No, but I refuse to loan him money while he's supporting some trashy family because he wants to keep his girlfriend around. I did, however, loan my ex-sister-in-law money to get my nephew braces and to cover her rent for a couple of months. My brother was furious that I loaned her money, but not my own flesh and blood brother. I told him why I didn't loan him money, and he said his girlfriend and her kids were earning their keep, or whatever the duck that meant. He even told me to stay the duck away from my son. And yes, my ex-sister-in-law will pay me back. I'm not worried about that. She doesn't want to be indebted to me. Not the a-hole. You did lend your money to your own flesh and blood, your nephew. If you lend money to your brother in his current situation, you might as well flush it down the toilet. Good on you for looking out for your nephew. He's lucky to have you. Not the a-hole. There are 5 people in your brother's house who are old enough to get jobs and pool their money to scrape enough together for the mortgage repayments. Also, banks are having repayment holidays, so he could just speak with his mortgage broker. Not the a-hole. Your brother doesn't have a right to your money. You are a good uncle. You did the right thing. Tell your brother he should be mad at himself because his bad decisions are negatively affecting his kid. Not the a-hole. Just because your brother decided to fund the lives of 3 other adults doesn't mean you have to as well. You helped the child, the one that can't help himself. Good choice. Also, he is your blood, so your brother is wrong on that one. My daughter is 20. She's one of 4. She doesn't work nor go to school. We've had countless discussions about this with her. My husband and I pay all her bills. College is not a necessity in our household, so if you're not going to attend school, then work it is. Only she hasn't held a job for longer than 3 months. Her complaint is that she never makes enough money to enjoy herself. I told her, welcome to the real world, kid. The last job she held was over 2 years ago. My husband feels I'm expecting too much of her and to let her be and find her way. She has gotten multiple traffic violations, running red light, not coming to a complete stop at a stop sign, not wearing her seatbelt, speeding in a school zone while children are present, etc. Over $2.5K in tickets. Tickets we weren't aware of. Just so happened she went through a roadblock and there was a warrant for her arrest for unpaid tickets and driving on a suspended license, which happened due to her unpaid tickets. I wanted to let her sit there, but my husband went and bailed her out. We had to pay a little over $700 for bail and to get her car out of the impound, and that's not including reinstatement fees. Upset about it, I had our eldest son take her battery out of her car, which sent her crying to my husband because he's usually the one that lets her get away with everything without holding her accountable. He tried talking me into giving her the vehicle back, but I refused. A car is a privilege. I gave the car to our 17-year-old, which has caused a hellspin of arguments with my daughter. I gave her a choice: go to school or get a job, but a car is out of the equation right now. Until she shows effort, I would no longer pay for her phone bill, no more getting her hair, nails, and feet done, no shopping money. I even cut off her emergency debit card down to $50 a month. She had 60 days to make up her mind about school or obtain a job. That's it. 60 days has come and gone, and she's been sulking around the house and crying to her father with every excuse in the book. She doesn't feel like college is for her. Understandable. She has these high expectations that she's supposed to be making a lot of money out of high school. She doesn't want to work a fast food job. I explained to her that most teenagers and young adults start off with fast food jobs, but there are other options. Most work their way up to a career of their choice. I did, her father did, her siblings do. Father has been pleading her case. I told him that she will never stand on her own if she doesn't know responsibility. I took the legal steps to have her evicted. She was served like 2 or 3 days ago, and it has caused an uproar in our house. My husband states I've gone too far. My daughter is in disbelief and can't believe I would put her out. I won't, but she doesn't know that. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. First, you and your husband need to get on the same page, otherwise all of this is pointless, unless you are willing to separate households. And that's a different level of issue. Ask your husband what happens to your daughter, family, if you died, were severely injured, etc. How will your children cope? How can your daughter possibly succeed in life if she can't launch now with support? If she no longer has that support, what will happen to her? He is setting her up for failure. Him. Once you get hubby on the same page, then you work together on daughter. Honestly, it's going to be an uphill battle because she has already gotten away with so much. Set up action plans and consequences. Then enforce the consequences. You are not the a-hole. Your husband is. Not the a-hole. One thing stands out, and that's if needing the car is a requirement to find a job. But she'd also have to show that she would. What does your hubby think of all of this? What's his timeline for letting her find her way? A year? 5 years? A decade? I'm surprised you're still paying for anything for her if she acts like this. No allowance, no cell phone, no car insurance, no gas, no cosmetics. She gets a room, food, and whatever rules you impose in your household. Of course, you know hubby would sneak her cash to keep spoiling her if the official line was that she was cut off. Is she an only daughter, and is that why your hubby lets her do whatever she wants? Not the a-hole. She clearly needs to get her wits together and start becoming responsible for her own things and learn more discipline, as well as she needs to open her eyes and see the real world that is hard work is the only way to get what you want. No one lives in a movie where you snap your fingers and then have a Gucci life. Also, you need to have a serious talk with your husband because he is also part of the problem by babying her and letting her behavior happen instead of disciplining it and teaching her about responsibility and the consequences of her choices. The moment he stops enabling her behavior is where the first step comes from your daughter to actually grow out of her teenage mindset and into a more young adult mindset. My husband, 26 male, and I, 25 female, have been married 5 years and have a baby, and he still is yet to meet my family because he was in the military and my family lived across the country. So it wasn't always financially doable for us both to fly to my family when he had blocks of leave. He just got out and has 5 days before he starts his civilian job. I had surprised him with plane tickets to visit my family since I had saved up about $2,000 and made plans for us to spend a day in San Diego since it's not far from my hometown and he had been wanting to go back for a long time. He just told me today, 2 days before we leave, that he is going to have his friend pick him up the day we arrive, and he is going to spend the weekend with his friend in San Diego instead. He said he'd come back Saturday night to meet my family, even though he leaves first thing Sunday morning. I told him that this weekend was supposed to be spent with family, and had I known he was going to ditch everyone, that I wouldn't have bought him a plane ticket. This friend he's meeting up with isn't even someone he's talked to in 4 years. I told him if he's going to waste the family trip, Then he can crash at his friend's place or pay out of pocket for his own hotel room. I also told him not to ask me for a cent to get food or any extras and that he'd have to pay for it himself. He said I'm being unreasonable because he just wants to see his old friends. But honestly, I'm just beyond upset, especially since I saved money for this trip and family members moved their schedules around us so they could meet him. It's not like I blindsided him. All these plans were set a month in advance. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Honestly, you may want to go further and just cancel his flight altogether. Let him know that if he wants to hang out with friends, he can spend his own time and money, not yours. Also, talk about this, because this is super selfish behavior from someone that you've committed to spending your life with and raising a child together, and does not bode well for the long term. Not the a-hole. It's weird you've been married 5 years and he seems to be refusing to meet your family now that it's planned. I think the bigger question here is why? You need to make him tell you what's up. Your marriage will never last if he's not honest with you. Not the a-hole. OP, I say this as a military member myself. I've seen this a million times. Guys get out and they completely change. There's a non-zero chance that he was just using you for the BAH and off-post housing. I'm not saying that's what he did. I'm saying I've seen it before. The fact that he is ditching you to hang out with someone he hasn't seen in years makes me think that he may become one of those people that gets divorced right after getting out, due to no longer needing the BAH, off-post housing. My brother and his ex-wife finalized their divorce last year, and it was messy. During that time, for a variety of reasons, I had to get involved, and it did not go well. I was given a protective order because my ex-sister-in-law is ducking crazy. She cannot be in the same general area as me. So this last weekend was the final performance of a state dance competition that my niece is a finalist in. Both sides of her family plan to show up and sit at completely opposite ends of the performance hall. However, with my restraining order in place, her mother would be forced to leave if I showed up. I didn't plan to go just to not stir up any trouble, but my niece insisted she wanted me there, knowing her mother could not show up. The truth of this whole situation is, I know my brother and niece wanted me there, so her mother could not legally show up. My brother got full custody of their daughter, and his ex only gets to see her twice a month. In the end, I got pressured into going, and none of my niece's other side of her family showed up. The event went great, but since then, I felt kind of crappy. My niece and my brother just used me to make sure her mom could not show up. My parents got a call from my brother's ex the night of the recital where she was crying and begging for them to stop in and stop my brother from using me. My family is biased, as am I, against my brother's ex. She is a human piece of crap, sure, but I feel like this was one step too far in regards to the whole situation. She is still the mother of my niece, and I feel it is completely crappy of me to deprive her of at least showing up to support her daughter. My brother and niece are more than happy about this, but I feel like we've taken this to a level where two wrongs don't make a right. As a child of divorce, I've been in this situation before, and if the niece didn't want her mom there, you did the right thing. There's nothing quite like being forced to see a parent you want nothing to do with, let alone having to do it in front of peers at a competition. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Why should your niece be forced to be around her crazy mom if she doesn't want to be? This sounds like a pretty clear case of ex-sister-in-law making her bed and having to lie in it. It would be different if it was just your brother using your restraining order to keep his ex away. But if it is also what your niece wants, then her mom needs to put some work into their relationship before her opinion matters. Not the a-hole. You didn't do anything. The child didn't want her mother there. If your ex-sister-in-law loved, cared, and respected her daughter, she wouldn't go even if you weren't there. This is not your fault. It's her own. And don't put it in your head they were using you. Maybe they genuinely wanted you there. A week ago, I thought my biggest Christmas decision was what to get my boyfriend, whom we will call Dan. Eventually, I decided on something he mentioned a while ago, a DNA test kit. I did some research on the best kind, and even went down the rabbit hole of theories around these tests. Despite the stories, I decided it was still a good gift because of how many times he's mentioned it in passing. It's not something he would ever expect to get from me, but something that I know would excite him. The perfect gift, right? Wrong. A couple days after ordering it, his mom asked me for gift ideas for him. We've exchanged ideas before, and I ended up just telling her the items off the list that I bought, and I figured I'd tell her the main part of the gift. As soon as I mentioned DNA test, she went completely pale and started to fidget. She said, "Oh boy, That makes me nervous. You might have to wait on that gift, maybe until his birthday. His dad and I have to talk." My initial reaction, of course, is, "Oh, crap." And right about then, Dan walks in from the garage, so I couldn't get any more details. The next day, I texted her saying I wanted to talk. That evening, she caught me right after Dan went out to warm up the car. She started to explain that they used a sperm donor because her and now ex-husband couldn't have kids. She went on to say how every child is God's gift, and he wanted them to have Dan and Will, his brother, also donor conceived. I'm getting frustrated at this point because all I want to say is that I'm not comfortable knowing that information before Dan does. I'm not comfortable lying to him, and this is majorly stressing me out. I tell her this, and she just says she doesn't know when is a good time to tell them because Will lives out of state, and she wants to tell them together. We didn't get to finish the conversation then, but I really want to tell her that they need to tell him soon because I don't feel right keeping this info from him, and it sounds like they aren't really in a rush to tell them. She mentioned his birthday, which isn't until July. I'm thinking they should tell him before the new year because there won't ever be a good time. He's 24. They had plenty of years to find a good time. Am I an a-hole if I tell her a date they need to tell him by? I'm extremely stressed, and he can already tell something is bothering me, and he is starting to get frustrated that I won't talk about it. Not the a-hole, though thank goodness this came up before you gave him the DNA kit. You're right that there will never really be a good time now. His mom has definitely left it too late. I wouldn't recommend it, but a surefire way of forcing the issue would be to give your boyfriend the DNA kit anyway. Not worth it for Christmas, but maybe necessary if it hasn't come up by his birthday. What I would recommend would be talking with his mother one more time, explaining again what a difficult position she's put you in. If she's still not budging, then talk to your boyfriend. Say his mom let something slip to you that you are finding hard to keep from him, but that he really needs to hear directly from his mom. And be there for him. This is going to be rough whatever way it goes. Not the a-hole. They should have told him by now. It's nothing to be ashamed about. I would tell her that you're giving him the DNA test for Christmas as planned, and let her make the decision from there. He'll find out one way or another. Not the a-hole. He's an adult, and also there's a lot of things, medically, it's important to know about if one can. He's been thinking he's the father's blood this whole time, giving an inaccurate medical history to doctors. That's not really great. Besides that, clearly there are things, especially in this day and age, that can make the truth possibly come out. And they should try to give him the nicest, safest possible reveal.